Well, we've had lots of talk, certainly in the last year or so, but certainly as this new session of Congress begins, on the importance of tax reform. Our country is at a point in time in which we certainly are no longer competitively global. The economy now is one that works against us because of our tax code. And I think there is a general consensus in the Senate that reforming the tax code is one that is of significant importance, something that must be done. I'm often asked when I'm back in Kansas, but here in Washington, D.C., do you expect there to be broad-based tax reform? And it's one that we keep guessing about the likelihood of that happening. And I think it's typical of elected officials, politicians, to always talk about the need for comprehensive tax reform. We talk about lowering rates, making the tax system more fair, less bureaucratic, less paperwork. And I certainly join in those sentiments and believe that the current circumstance we have in regard to our tax code is such that it limits the freedom of Americans, American businessmen and women, individuals and their families. We make way too many decisions based upon the consequences of those decisions, how they're affected by the tax code. So I'm all on board on tax reform, but I want to talk about what I believe is the best solution toward tax reform, and it's not tinkering with the current system. It's an overhaul of the current tax code. I have joined my colleague from Georgia, Senator Perdue, in once again introducing the FairTax plan. And I started back a long time ago in Congress knowing that we needed to make significant changes in our tax code, with a belief that most Americans ought to be able to file a tax return without the need of professional help, that we ought to be able to make decisions that are in the best interest of ourselves, our families, our businesses, without always going to the tax code to see what the consequences of those decisions were. And I looked at a variety of proposals that were being considered at the time, continue to be considered today, and ultimately reached the conclusion that the FairTax is the best option for significant reform. And I want to talk just a moment this morning about why I think that's the case. It is a significant step in the direction of individual freedom. I would highlight for my colleagues that, and I've said this on the Senate floor before, I think the greatest responsibility we have as American citizens is to pass on to the next generation of Americans the freedoms and liberties guaranteed by our Constitution and the opportunity for every American to live the American dream. The FairTax repeals all federal, corporate, and individual taxes, payroll taxes, capital gains taxes, and estate and gift taxes, and replaces them with a revenue-neutral personal consumption tax. The FairTax allows Americans to keep the entirety of their income, putting individuals in charge of their own finances, not the government, or more specifically, not the Internal Revenue Service. All Americans should be able to trust the IRS, which exercises great authority over the lives of Americans in this country, but we know from past experiences that expectation is no longer founded. And so getting rid of the Internal Revenue Service is a significant benefit that comes from the passage of the FairTax. The FairTax is worthy of people's consideration. It ought to be more than just a talking point. It deserves a debate, a discussion, a vote, and consideration by the United States Senate. Mr. President, I yield back